we're such a nice small group that I think what we're going to do is more conversation style instead of us standing up here to talk to you. But I feel very funny talking about scavenger hunts when we have the queen of scavenger hunts sitting right there. Judy, Judy Klein. She's the expert. She's the expert. So it's funny. Here we have an expert sitting here, and then the opposite extreme. Jeff said that you don't know anything about scavenger hunts.
I know what a scavenger hunt is.
You know what a scavenger hunt is? But you never use one. Okay, so Jeff, for your sake, what's a scavenger hunt? It's an activity where an individual or a team, they're giving a list of items and they have to go search for this. And actually it developed as from parties. So its origin is really more party oriented, where mothers were trying to think of nice little games to do with their kids. But believe it or not, from party it went big jump. It's now used in the academic and corporate arena. So a lot of corporations use scavenger hunts for their training because it's great team building exercises. And in the academic world, when I did the searches for colleges, I couldn't believe the majority of colleges in the United States have some sort of college-wide scavenger hunt, except for us. But maybe after today, we'll develop, right, we can develop one. There are some established scavenger hunts. University of Chicago is considered the guru for scavenger hunts. They started it in 1988, and within a matter of 10 years, 1999, they became world known for their scavenger hunts. And you can actually look at what they do on YouTube. So every year they have a scavenger hunt in the spring, and it's divided into 3 components. They have hello, come on in. What they do is they have an Olympic size event, they have a search event, and they have their road trip. So the road trip, everybody has to search for items, but it has to be within a radius of 1,000 miles, which is a big stretch. So they've had people go all the way from Chicago to Arkansas to find items. And they're posted online every single year. And it's not just, fun, it is fun, and it's not just games. Part of it is games, like the Olympic event. What one team did is that they wove baskets underwater. Another team, for their big show item, they actually made a nuclear reactor on their campus, in their quad. So they, they took different components, and they took thorium and mixed it with neutrons, and they developed plutonium and uranium. And the Department of Energy was so impressed of how they built this little nuclear reactor that they won the prize for 1999, and that was the year that they established themselves as the guru for scavenger hunts. Another famous scavenger hunt is actually done with another school where they do archaeology, the Mediterranean Cyprus one. This school takes their students on archaeology digs every year. So when they go to Turkey, they have a bunch of college students who don't know anything about Turkey, can't speak Turkish. So what they do is to get the students accustomed to living in these new surroundings, they do a scavenger hunt. So for example, they'll divide them up into teams, and they'll ask them to find where the hospital is, locate a pharmacy, different important sites that they need to know when they're living in Turkey for a couple of months. So for scavenger hunts, what we see is that there are a lot of benefits to using scavenger hunts. And of course, we all know that this is a great way to get information. You're teaching students teamwork, organization. Usually when you do scavenger hunts, you have small groups or larger groups. You're forcing them to gather information. And isn't that what we want them to do in college, is learn how to research for information on their own? They're also analyzing information. So when they're hunting for different items, they don't just take anything. they have to really think about, is this going to be appropriate for whatever task that you have them doing? They're learning the importance of precision. You have to be accurate. So there are scavenger hunts where they're using math, science, like the thermonuclear reactor that they made. They had to know precisely what formulas to use. They learn to become familiar with their surroundings, like the Turkish Cyprus hunt. And most of all, this is experiential learning. They're really learning, they're practicing experiential learning, and they're having fun with academics. So what kind of scavenger hunts are there? Well, there are a lot of outside scavenger hunts, campus exploration. Most of the scavenger hunts that I found were predominantly learning about their campus. One scavenger hunt, for example, Smith College. Smith College is very into sustainable living, and they've developed gardens where students have to work the different gardens. So the scavenger hunt will ask students to find all the different gardens on campus, find the toilets. They have, Smith College has installed green toilets. So students have to find out about, you know, where did they get these toilets and how does it help the environment. So they're learning not only about their campus, but some conservation ideas. Yep, go ahead.
I mean, the thing about this that's really interesting, I find, having used it in several different ways, is that it can be very academic, or it can be sort of more about the process. You know, in other words, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's good to just get the students together and having to accomplish a shared goal, right? And there's a variety of ways you can do that. You could do groups in class, that sort of thing. But this actually gets them sort of thinking about strategy too, which is something that's interesting. We'll probably touch. Hey, Susan, you want to come in? We're doing a workshop. And so they, you know, for me, one of the big benefits is thinking about just getting our students to interact with each other in a meaningful way to accomplish a task, and that, you know, is one way for them to form little like study buddies, perhaps, or a little cohort within the class, a little support structure where a lot of our students don't. And I don't know, some of the most fun classrooms or course sections that I've had is when the students have done these just things, even if they're not that academic, because they start seeing each other as resources and they work together to accomplish that goal, which I think is important.
Well, you know, not just using each other as resources, but learning about the resources that you have within your college. So St. Olaf's College, what they do with their scavenger hunt, ooh, this is really tiny. They actually have them look up, you know, what are the general education requirements? Because really, how many of our students know what they need for their major? How many know, you know, how long the fall semester lasts? How many know where the registrars is? So what St. Olaf has done is they've really developed a scavenger hunt where the student is learning all the necessary things that they need to know before they graduate, not right before you graduate. Oh, how many credits do I need to graduate? But you start right at the beginning. Another college that I found was Arizona State University, and they have a big engineering component to their college. They have 5 different schools of engineering. They have the aerospace engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and they found that their students really didn't know that much about just within their own field. So they decided that it was useful to create a scavenger hunt where they're going around and investigating only, not the whole college, but just within their field. So something like the Humanities department, we could always create a scavenger hunt where students are investigating just the Humanities department, or, you know, the business department, or, you know, the math department. And I thought it was very interesting that they're going, the students have to investigate not just their department, but where they can, you know, how do they access their advisor within their own department? How do they find library information within the School of Engineering. And I think there's another one where another school, University of Southern Illinois. Kevin, I think you have that one where.
And this one I think we have some copies, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll give you copies of this one.
This one is really great because it's a psychology department. And not just, they did this study on the effectiveness. And it was basically getting to know their psychology courses and their psychology department and some of the investigation of career types that go along with it. So being social scientists as well, they wanted to sort of evaluate the efficacy of it. And so hopefully we have, I don't know if we have enough, but if we don't have enough,
we'll make more
copies.
Yeah.
But this is a really valuable one because it takes you through sort of a systematic approach to it. And one of the things, you want me to highlight the end part there too?
Yep.
One of the things that they found, which is particularly interesting, is the results. This is a little small, so let me again. But I want you to look at this first column first. Let me bring it up so it's really big. Also, let me brighten it a little bit too, I think. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So, if you look at the very top here, students reported greater knowledge of the resources after taking part in the activity. This is even true for seniors, whom one might assume to be already fairly knowledgeable. Right? In addition, student ratings suggested that the activity was an effective and enjoyable way to acquire this information. And when do our students voluntarily say this is enjoyable and effective? They might say it's effective but not enjoyable, but they want to do that. But it's nice to have both of those two things. Instructors can easily modify the activity to meet specific objectives. For example, though we live in a scavenger hunt, okay, well, that's, but obviously broadening out to academic things, looking at things disciplinarily. So even looking at a text and having a scavenger hunt about a particular text or between texts, things like that. I don't know what happened to the copy here. Unfortunately, it's kind of blurred out. Is this from my? This might have been where I had highlighted and didn't copy it right. Where's the other thing that I was saying? From a content perspective, this activity allows students to learn about the resources relevant. Okay. Where was the piece? Sorry, I'm looking at my version I printed out looked differently, so it's. I wish I had that one in front of me, which I didn't bring. Here we go. The process benefits. This is kind of what I alluded to earlier, this last paragraph. So activity also has significant process benefits. Students work collaboratively. If you skim down a little bit farther, you'll see something like, this is actually, students started to think about their goals. Are you taking care of these? And how they can maybe work together to meet some of these common goals, even outside of the assignment, right? So I think this study is really great because it does look at it from a social scientist kind of perspective, and it evaluates the effectiveness versus a control at students who didn't actually perform this activity. Okay? So anyway, this one we hope to get to everybody. I think we only have about 6 copies. We weren't sure how many folks were coming. But if you want one of these copies and you don't get one today, just let me know. I can send it to you over email and stuff like that too. So let me show one. Let me go over to the one that's the link that's on here is to the Museum of Connecticut History Scavenger Hunt online. Which I don't know if you want to.
Right, yes. I found this was fascinating. So within a lot of scavenger hunts, it's not just your campus, but it's also exploring your community. And maybe we can incorporate having our students. Wayne, you took the students to the old State House, and you thought that was a great experience.
Yeah.
So here you could also incorporate some information from our own Connecticut museum with all these great, wonderful here. Memorial Hall, where the governor's house is, the Dome, Legislative Building. I've taken students there on field trips, but I didn't realize that you actually had a scavenger hunt, a site. So if I had known, I could have printed out these questions for them to look at while we were actually walking around the state legislative building. So this is one way, not just for students to know about their campus, but it's very worthwhile to have them learn about their community. With the old State House, next time what you could do is you could make some scavenger hunt questions before they go to the old State House, you know, such as find the information outside the old State House about George Washington and Rochambeau. There's a plaque right on the corner of Main and Pearl Street. And right at that corner, it gives you a little, it's a state, you know, a history marker that George Washington met Rochambeau right at that corner. So how many of us know about that in Connecticut? Because it's just this tiny little sign. But having students, you know, learn about that would be great.
Taking advantage of the downtown is really a great way to apply the scavenger hunt idea. I don't know if you know about the church, the old church back where, you know, it's kind of surrounded by Constitution Plaza. It's that old, like, 1850s church back there. It has a whole story behind it. There's actually a monument built into the corner of that church. And if you look really closely, you might have to climb up a little bit, you'll see it's a monument to a man and his son who owned the property originally. And the story behind that, and this brings up interesting issues of critical thinking for students, the story behind that is they wanted to raise that church. And when they built Constitution Plaza, and they destroyed a lot of the other buildings that were there. But it couldn't be destroyed because it was in the charter. And when the man and the son died young, and the man wanted to sort of memorialize him, he gave it to the church. The church then built the church, and they somehow got it in the Hartford City Charter that it could not be destroyed. So that's why you had that really old building among these, you know, some obviously ours is a little bit older than some of the other ones there, but it's like this diamond in the rough of history nestled right next to our building. And it's not even an active church. I think it's just does mission work. So it's this little, like, nugget of history, and then you can get students thinking about critical thinking about, you know, the role of having that memorial there, and having, why would it be in the city charter? Why would you want to have it, something like that in there? Why was it important enough to preserve this kind of memory? And the city didn't find a way to get around it either, so it's still there. It stands there, right, as a sort of testament to the old Hartford and things like that. It's really, there's so many little secrets and little things, even on our campus too, by the way, that you can get students thinking about some of these different issues. And if they find them and they see them on their own, they're going to have that impression more so if you just kind of tell them about it. Judy, did you have a question?
Say again where the church is?
It is, you know, what is it? Which street is the one? Is it Market? I can't remember.
Columbus is
Columbus
behind
is the farther one near the river. It's the next one. It's the one right when you come out the back. Market. Is it Market or Morgan? I always get the two mixed up. It's Market. I think, right?
Yeah, that one's Market.
It's right behind here. It's the very next one. So we have Main, and I believe it's Market. It's the one that runs parallel with Main. So when you come out the back door, like as you go into the...
That's Market.
Right? Yeah. If you took a right, instead of going across to the left to get to the parking garage, if you took a right, it's up like a half a block. And you'll see this brownstone church there.
It's right by University of Connecticut.
Yes, it's attached to the Catholic bookstore. It's
yeah.
Right. Yep. Yep. Really interesting and kind of sad, unfortunately, that for whatever reason they must have added a drain pipe after, you know, from the roof of the church, and it drains right down into where, like, the monument is, like the plaque or the monument is. It's big too. It's like, you'll see it, the right front corner of the church. There's this big, probably 3 foot by 4 foot kind of rectangle there that looks out of place. It's really dirty and it's really a shame, but go explore it sometime and you'll see. It's such an interesting part of the park. Don't climb in there until you want to.
Okay. Could you put back to the thing, please? Besides outside sources that we use, scavenger hunts, there's also in-class use. And for the most part, in-class is used with internet searches. And I'm sure many of you have used this technique with your students where you have them look for information. So if you're reading Edgar Allan Poe, you might, before you have them read Edgar Allan Poe, you might have them just do a search, you know, find out, you know, what happened to Edgar Allan Poe when he was 10 years old. Something, you know, more specific than, you know, just, oh, who was Edgar Allan Poe? He had a fever and he almost died. So.
It's just a fever.
But he almost died.
A text that works really well for this too is a dictionary, right? Especially in reading courses. I do an analysis of dictionaries in my 003 class. And you know, it can be very enlightening for students to really have to look in depth in the dictionary, right? Like, you know, what are some of the resources besides definitions that are in the dictionary? Most, you know, it's not just definitions that are in most dictionaries, right? So you can make up a series of questions just to have them explore the dictionary and find out. You know, even if you took 15 minutes to have them explore a dictionary, it would be pretty valuable, I think. And that's one of the, I end up spending more like 45 minutes, and they do a bunch of different things on the dictionary analysis. But sometimes you can think of this scavenger hunt sounds like this big thing, but it's actually kind of, you can do a very micro scavenger hunt too, and have it be very worthwhile. As long as they're experiencing it and they're sort of teaching themselves as they do it, I think that's the real key to all of this.
Current events. Here we were told that we had to read to the students about H1N1. So here, after we read all that information about if you're sick, make sure you call us. A lot of students asked me, well, what are the symptoms of H1N1? And that wasn't on the list. And I didn't know what were the symptoms. So I decided, well, why don't you go search and find out and report back to the class exactly what kind, how are the symptoms of H1N1 different from the regular flu? And what the students found out is really there were no differences. It's the same thing, and so they want to know, well, why are we so crazy about H1N1? So again, I said, well, let's go, go on med.com to ask the doctor and find out what is so special about the H1N1. And they realize it's because we don't have the antibodies, unlike the other flu. So here, instead of me telling them all this stuff, they just went and searched for themselves. And I was able to incorporate it as a writing assignment. The syllabus. Use scavenger hunts. We all have to talk about our syllabus first or second day of class. So what I decided to do the last 2 semesters was, why should I stand up there and just explain to them what's in the syllabus? They get the syllabus, but they also have the scavenger hunt, where they're broken down into groups, and each group has to find specific information about the syllabus. And then after they find the information, they report back to the whole class. So it's a much better way. I think they actually learn the information better than me standing up there and just saying, okay, now you have to know that the name of this course and where you can find me. Reviewing for an exam. I also love to use scavenger hunts, so here we're almost final time. And what I'll do with scavenger hunts is, if I'm teaching grammar, I'll have different examples, present perfect tense or present continuous tense, and sentences where they have to identify, find the sentences that have simple past tense, or find the sentences that have present, continuous tense. They're reading a text about Martin Luther King. So to review for the final exam, I'll make up some questions, and each group will have to identify different parts of the text about Martin Luther King. Previewing readings. Now, Jane just sent us an article about 2-year colleges. I don't know if you all read your email. 2-year colleges, swamp, no longer welcome. And when I saw this article, I thought, wow, this is actually perfect to do a preview exercise, because it has, how we all want our students to preview before they read. So you want them to do the skimming, the scanning, before they actually start reading. And this article is wonderful because it's talking about a lot of different colleges. And most students, when they read, they'll start right away from the first word and just start reading, reading, reading. And then by the time they read to this paragraph, they're going to forget what they had started from the beginning. But if they do previewing strategies, they'll be able to break down the process a little more incrementally to help them process and remember the information. So what I would do with this article is I would have them first look and tell me find the different colleges that are mentioned in this article. And there are about 8 of them, all the different community colleges. So by forcing them to just focus on college names, you make them review the text before they actually start reading. Then I would ask a question such as, find the name of the governor of New York. And then they would keep going onto the text and they find governor. So this way, you're really making them read the text very, very fast, several times, before they finally actually read the full reading. And it helps much better with reading comprehension. I found a professor, and this is for you, Joan. This is an accounting professor. What he does, he uses scavenger hunts for current events. And he decided that with all the scandal that's been going on, he really wanted his students to learn about ethics in accounting. And what he does is that he gathers a lot of articles from USA Today, Financial Times, and he has these articles in class, and students have to come in and find articles that deal with ethics from all the different sources. And then he has them also search on the news, ABC, NBC, and each day they have to listen for some sort of segment that is dealing with Wall Street shenanigans. So, by incorporating the topic that he's trying to study with here, they're really learning how to find out for themselves. He found that the students actually enjoy it much more than if he just stood up there and lecture. And he finds that they actually remember the information a lot longer, and they did better on exams by doing the scavenger hunts. Something that I thought was very interesting too is that scavenger hunts are so accepted that there's even a legal research scavenger hunt workbook. And this is for you too, Joan. Her daughter goes to law school. So I thought that here, a law student studying about all the different codes throughout the country. Each state has their own law code. So instead of just reading this huge textbook, they actually use the workbook, the scavenger workbook, to help them remember this information. So what we see is that scavenger hunt is really, it's a useful tool that we can incorporate, but you have to be very careful how you use this too.
So on that note, we gave you some guidelines because we know you're all anxious to try that now. As soon as you leave here, you're already stewing in your brain. I can tell that you're going to think of somebody to do. So we came up with some general guidelines based on the ones that we saw in research. There seemed to be some things to do or to avoid. Okay, and the first one is just avoiding superficial yes or no questions or tasks. Something that's too simple is, what's the definition of this word? Oh, okay, but maybe look at, well, what are some different usages of a word, or what are some ways that this is applied, or actually do some sort of task instead of just, a yes or no question. One of the things I used to do in IDS is to get people, and I did this all the time in my IDS course. It was an interdependence sort of lesson about getting out there and talking to people, going to the library. So they had to go, for instance, to the Dean of Student Services office, and they had to actually talk to somebody there, and enough so they can get a card out of that person from that office. So they had to say, hello, I'm doing this for a class, and here's your card. And they, of course, I set them up a little bit, which is actually, did that one get on there? Or did it not get on there? The last one when you had it? Okay. Check with, I don't think it got, we had a technological glitch where one of the things wouldn't open after we revised it.
This morning.
Yeah, so anyway, one of the ones that's not on here is you tell people ahead of time if you know they're going to visit their office or whatever. So I used to talk to the folks in Dean of Student Services, say this is the day, a bunch of my students are going to come down, so and then it gives them an excuse to say, oh, here's what the Dean of Student Services does, or here's what whatever department it is. So it's they kind of like play along as the actors of this stuff if you can find people who are amenable to it. I encourage teamwork and distribution of tasks. This sometimes happens on its own organically, which we'll find when all of you get to do one in a few minutes. Yeah. We'll see who's the most efficient, but students either, a lot of times want to just do it work. It depends on maybe the size of the group, but they might say, or you two go do this, you two go do that, and we'll do this, or they just do it all together. But either way, it allows them to come up with that structure on their own, which is really helpful. Encourage problem solving. Well, if we have time, we're going to look at some of the videos. One of the videos was they had to build a labyrinth. and they had like one of those things where you had to get the ball to the end point without dropping it in the holes, and they had to, you know, this is the University of Chicago one again. Incorporate objects. This could be, you know, going somewhere, getting a card, as I said, a pamphlet, something like that, or maybe it's a computer file that they email to you if it's an electronic one. Art, I don't mean stealing someone's painting and taking it to class, but, you know, writing about it. Like I used the, for a writing prompt, I used the photography exhibit downstairs, had students write about some of the photographs that were down there, so you can incorporate that into a scavenger hunt as well. But again, that gets them sort of experientially involved with this stuff. Right? Make the task meaningful. Again, the process of getting through it is often, you know, so that the journey is often related to destination. Right? The destination is knowledge, but by getting them there, by them getting them there themselves, is they're really going to retain it a lot more. It's going to be more meaningful. And the last one, make it fun. You know, this is an excuse for you to have a little bit of fun in the classroom. The students are very responsive to it, I find, and I'll even get students writing on this end of the semester evaluations. You know, they'll write, what did you like most about the class? Scavenger hunt. And it's like, of all the other work that I put into this class, it's still scavenger hunt. But it is memorable. Students do take that with them when they go on. So that's good.
So yeah, we're going to send you off actually on a little scavenger hunt. So talk about experiential learning.
Yeah. So why don't we kind of anticipated.
So you can leave your things here. We'll be here.
What I'll probably do is I'll maybe float around. I have two different groups. So maybe we'll do, if we can do two groups, two teams. They're different questions, so you can't cheat off each other. But everyone will get a copy. This is just a model how it goes. What do you want to do for groups? This side versus that side, or do you want to self-select a little bit more? I don't know. What does the sticker say? Achieving your dream at Catholic Community College. What's the purpose of 1125?
That was an easy one.
Pottery Studio. Who owns the trademark? This one you had to have good eyesight to see how it's a small thing, but it's Warner Lambert Company. Who occupies 1108? Marcus Lawson. And we get this one? Yeah. Find it? How'd you find it? His door. Look on his door.
Yeah, but look at all the stuff on his door.
Down here, you see a poem called Flag, and it says, so much to become a part of. And how about this one? This one's a little bit tricky, too. You find it?
We ended up with an 800.
You got an 800?
Where did you find it?
Well, I went to John McNamara's office and had a Google.
Oh, that's resourceful. Now that's resourceful.
Oh, wrong. Sorry. You guys learned this group. There you go. 100 points. No points.
So where was the electronics?
No, there was those, in the middle area where those computers are.
Oh, yeah.
There's those posters, and at the bottom of the poster it says, for more information, call 211. So, you know, you gotta pay attention to details. You know?
But that's okay. I always give my student prizes. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. You always have to have a prize. Of course. That's what makes it fun.
So what did you all notice about the process, though? It was interesting how the two groups had very different styles. This group was like, let's get out there and start doing it. This group's like, we'll just write down a bunch that we think we know. And they distributed it, you know, the four of them went off and did different questions. This group kind of stuck together a little bit more, right? But there's benefits to both of those, obviously. You can see why one might be a little faster, but maybe one's a little more accurate. I don't know, right? But either way, you kind of figured it out on your own. And that's what our students end up doing, right? And I think that's a really valuable tool for them just to learn the skills of creating a support structure and working together. And like Peggy said early on, this is something that is team building. It's going to be used in a workplace as well. So there's so many benefits, not just the knowledge, but the process and kind of the working together and stuff like that. Yeah, Wayne.
I found that fire extinguishers are like grammatical errors. Just when you think we found all of them,
That's right. Yeah. Good. Which is probably a good, although much more positive type of thing. Yeah.
And if you have to report out to the rest of the class, by the second class, everybody has been up in front of them already.
Yes.
You know, they don't face this.
Right.
Yep.
But
and I generally do it as as a little bit of a competition. You know, it's like I don't necessarily believe that competition is always the best way to motivate students, but it certainly does tend to work if you have a good
But I think
control
it's
on
fun competition,
Yeah.
so it's not like, you know, standing up there, who has, you know, the best answer. I just gave you an example of what I do with ESL students, because you know, language is limited, and they're scared. A lot of them are scared to go explore the college. So the beginning of the semester, I always do a scavenger hunt where they work in teams, so then they're not intimidated about talking to somebody. And I do have them, they'll go to the media department. So I've had them talk to Mike before and find out, you know, where is the media department? Because we, in ESL, at the end of their last year in ESL, they actually have to do a capstone project. So they do an oral presentation. And they're taped in the media studio. So I like to prepare them to know where is the media studio. And if Mike has time, he'll open the studio and let them look at it. So they're practicing getting familiar with where it is, and they're also talking to Mike and using language. But I do have to stress that make sure, whatever scavenger hunt, if it involves other people, just make sure you call and check with everybody. Because you know, some people do not want students on that certain day.
It's funny, I did something with Linda's office, again, for the IDS scavenger hunt, that's Career Development Office.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told her what I was doing, she was excited about it and everything else. And I said something like, what could they take, or what could they come in here and take something from it? And she said, oh, a mission statement, that would be great. And I'm like, oh, great, so you have a mission statement, you can print it out. And no, we don't have a mission statement. So this is a couple of years ago, she said, I'm going to write a mission statement. So kind of from it, she wrote a mission statement, which was a succinct description of what they do. And the student, she had a bunch of them printed out and posted and stuff like that. And when the students came in, they got to take a piece of paper with a mission statement of the Career Development Office on it. So it kind of worked in another way, that sort of a positive, unanticipated side effect was that she ended up sort of making something out of it, just because she knew students were going to be stopping in to talk with them and figure out something from them.
Actually, speaking of mission statement, I incorporated mission statement for one of my groups in my scavenger hunt because it's posted every single floor. And I figure, you know, students should look at that. I doubt they do. So one of the groups, they have to find what is the mission statement of Capital Community College. And most of the feedback I get from that is, what's a mission statement? We didn't know what a mission statement is until we read the sentences. Then now they're familiar with, you mean colleges and companies have mission statements? So it actually expanded their worldview of things. So yeah.
Have you ever done open-ended ones where you don't know the answers, like each student should find a different free family activity in the greater Hartford area, and like you compiled a list as opposed to having a list that you checked off? Like,
yeah, or having it says like multiple possible answers or something like that, so there's a range of answers. Like one of the things, again, this is for the IDS one, this is the one I did the most extensively. They had to figure out or name 3 of the consortium schools.
okay.
Right, out of what is it, 12 or 8 or whatever there are. So as long as they had to sort of figure out what the consortium was. A lot of them got it wrong because they thought just schools in the area are part of the consortium. They had to sort of take it to the next level and actually go to the 3rd floor and you know, find out what that means. And then there's actually, I think, a big banner that has all of them listed on there. But they had to kind of do a little bit more to get there. And then there are many answers they could have used for that. Right.
Actually, those, I think, sometimes the open-ended one are more fun.
Well, I thought they could
Where
do
it's,
the work
it's, you know,
for
it's
you.
less controlled.
Right.
Yeah. And you can have next semester, you could have those answers that your students from the first semester brought in, and then have that be the checklist for semesters thereafter.
Right.
Hey, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But we're just going to open up. If you could share some of, you know, ideas that you have for scavenger hunts that you've done in the past, or you think that you might be able to incorporate. And I think what's important is that don't look at scavenger hunts as taking a whole class period. It could be something as simple as 10 minutes, lasting 10 minutes in your class. Or, you know, it could be a whole class period. The scavenger hunt that I do in the beginning of the semester, it does take, they get 30 minutes, and then we do need that 45 minutes to come back and report on.
I like to go to the Wadsworth Athenaeum.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I remember taking ESL 013 students, and I sent them looking for something in the Athenaeum that reminded them of their first culture.
Ooh, that's great. Mm.
And of course, there
That's
are writing
wonderful.
prompts everywhere.
The thing is, if we can watch, this is like a 30-second
Yeah.
clip of part of it. There's a lot of videos on. If you go to YouTube and search for the Scavenger Hunt on this, you'll find it. This one is one of the things they had to do was build a little labyrinth to get the ball. You know that game where they had to build this, and so you'll see it's kind of dim. Well, maybe I can turn off the other light and see if that makes it better, but not much better, but a little bit better. But you'll see all the students around with notebooks and they're writing stuff down and whatever. I'm not really sure what they're writing, but it's kind of a neat thing. So, you want to watch that? And we can bring more discussion after. It's just a funny little thing. Might as well
1 minute,
show it.
yeah, 1 minute.
It's 30,
We have to move on to a.
27 seconds.
I don't know if we can.
But apparently it didn't work so well. It didn't really tilt in that direction. So probably failed, it looked like. But
You know, speaking of labyrinths, I haven't been there yet, but at this church over here on Church Street, there's supposed to be an indoor labyrinth there.
Really?
Yeah, because there's
which one, right across the street?
Yeah, I think this is it. It's what's this
Christ
one
Church?
called? Christ Church. I think, and that I want to take my students there, but I would need to check it out
Really?
myself first. So if anybody's been,
Gee.
you know.
No, I've never been in there.
Deny that? Is that true?
I've read that there's a canvas one.
A canvas.
Which would be
but
indoor.
it's public. It's open to the public. I would.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, we'll have to check it out, Wayne.
Well,
I'll
I
go
mean,
with you.
the best labyrinth in the whole area is at the Passionist Retreat Center, where they have sometimes have the those retreat meetings, Center for Teaching meetings there. There's actually one in the woods. It's made out of stone, and that one is spectacular. Best one in the state, probably. But yeah, so I've got a little bit of interest in checking these out. There's a brick one at this West Hartford Town Hall as well.
There's one on Sigourney Street, the church.
Oh,
on
right.
Sigourney
I haven't
Street.
been there either. Yeah.
We should take a faculty field trip to labyrinths all over.
Or
That must be
even.
getting stuck. Can you call? Can you call somebody to find your way out? Not like the end of The Shining, is it?
You can never get lost.
No?
Thank you.
Oh, is that what it's like? Okay.
It's not
It's not a
a
maze.
maze.
Because I think of those two things synonymous, but I guess they should. Or any
Well,
any
yeah.
questions? Thoughts?
Well, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
We're getting creative, you know?